Court Barn Museum is a museum of arts and crafts, and the students were coming to visit the museum to both undertake a workshop and to explore further the buildings in Chipping Campden that relates to the people who are featured in the museum, particularly C.R. Ashby and those who came with him and his Guild of Handicraft to the town in 1902.
Yes, just do come round. What we're going to do is split you into two anyway, so don't get too precious about sitting on, because you might actually be going and walking.
What you need to do today is to enjoy the day, just absorb everything, be really curious about everything that you see and is around you. It's probably as new to you as it is to me. I came yesterday, so it's not quite something, but very new. There's a lot to take in. And just to help you with that, what I would like you to try and do is at the end of the day to have one word or maybe a phrase that you'll take with you, maybe write it down and keep that. Keep one word. It might be the name of an object, it might be a concept, anyway, but just one. If you can get one thing to take away with you in your head from today, that would be fantastic, because we might be able to use that in our music making later. So I won't take up any more time now. Oh yes.
The students left the museum and started their walk through town past the almshouses and down into the High Street, and all down the High Street and into Sheep Street at the bottom. There are a variety of buildings that are important to Ashby and to the Guild members, starting with Woolstaplers Hall, where Ashby and his wife lived, past buildings where the unmarried guildsmen lived, down to places where they worked and spent their leisure time. The War Memorial was designed by Frederick Griggs, who was a friend of Ashby and came to the town and was really responsible for the preservation of many of the buildings of Camden as we see it today. He did a lot of building work in the town, a lot of preservation, and along with Ashby, some important architectural work. The students got to the bottom of the town where they saw Elm Tree House, where Ashby set up his architectural office and started the Camden School of Arts and Crafts with classes in all sorts of disciplines, art lectures and so on. And then they went into Sheep Street to Hart's Silver Workshop, which is very much today as it has been for the last 100 years.
Could you go round that side?
This man, Ashby, who was the founder of all this business, you can see up there, he had come out of Cambridge with qualifications as architect and went sort of into an architectural practice in London. And then he got interested and friendly with William Morris and interested in designing craft things like silver, jewellery, furniture and that sort of thing. And he started doing the design, and then he got nobody to make these things. So in 1888 he decided to set up this guild in the Mile End Road of London and collect craftsmen together to make the things he designed. And over the next 10 years he built it up and he got 80 men working for him. Ashby they called a romantic socialist, and he then got this sort of romantic idea that his men would work better in the beauty of the countryside and the growing of his dens. And so in May 1902 he moved all 80 men, wives, families to Camden. Unfortunately he probably wasn't the best businessman. By 1908 then he had to go into voluntary liquidation, and at that stage 2 or 3 of each of the craftsmen then took over the workshop, and his grandfather had come as a 20-year-old lad that then took over this workshop, and the family literally have worked here ever since. We literally design and make whatever the customer wants. It's all private commissioned.
Ideas. It might be one of those memories, those words that Andy suggested that you think about.
Silversmiths, cabinet makers, bookbinders, every craft you could think of.
The students were given an introduction to the work of Ashby and then were introduced to some of the masks that the Guild of Handicraft presented in Camden, and primarily the Art Workers Guild in London just before they came to Camden in the late 1800s, in which Ashby was involved. The students then explored and engaged with artefacts within Court Barn Museum so that they could look in detail at some of the work by Ashby and by other guild workers who worked with him, such as Paul Woodroffe and Griggs, looking at book illustration, looking at silver, looking at architecture, looking at stained glass. A variety of work which would all feed into their knowledge of the arts and crafts in the North Cotswolds.
Discuss them, argue about them, do whatever, but to try and see them through the eyes of Charles Ashby and the arts and crafts movement. In other words, remembering that he was, his sort of creed was one of honesty of material and handmade, and not machine turned out sort of rubbish in his terms, although it wasn't rubbish really. And we'd like to look at these and to say to yourself, which one would Ashby have chosen out of these two jobs?
Right, you can pick up everything, so just have a good look at everything and get some
Look how intricate it is. That was machine made. People would have been sat there going, look, Nina, what do you reckon? I would like. That was made on a pottery machine. This most big. He wouldn't like it because it's from Portugal, but if someone going to hear me. That one, look how intricate it is. This is look at this line.
Yes, I could do. Would somebody like to tell us about something that they really like that's on the table?
I like this one.
Now, tell us why you like that.
Because it's intricate and it's nice and it's homemade and
So you'd prefer to drink your cup of tea out of that one?
yes.
Does everybody agree with that, or does anybody prefer the other one?
I like this one because it's like 3D. Yes, but not anyone could make this. This is like really hard, but that's really simple.
I like to see you make one of them.
Which one do you think has been made by hand and which one by machine?
That one's hand.
Okay, so we've got a disagreement there. What does everybody else think?
We'll take a vote. Who thinks the pink one's?
One is from Witchcombe Pottery, which is, and it has been thrown by hand. The other one is an industrially produced. But it's quite interesting, I think, and it's communicating ideas of nature that Ashby and his guild workers are so keen on. It's got the bee on there. It's a bee. Is it a bee or some sort of insect? But also, it's really, when we think about the arts and crafts people's ideal of being true to materials, the clay one is saying exactly what it is, isn't it? It's not trying to be anything else. The other one is trying to be something a bit different. It's trying to be a beehive. And it's trying to look like a material that it's not actually. Probably looking like something like willow. Beehives would have been, in the old days, woven from willow. So there are lots of things there that it's trying to tell us that are not actually truthful to the material it's made out of. You prefer that one to the more...
Yeah, I prefer this
one
to that one.
Okay.
Really heavy.
Yes, I mean, do handle them because the way they feel and the way they behave in your hand is quite important to making a judgment about them. Does anybody prefer this more simple one?
You can put more stuff in that one.
Okay, the size is a factor, obviously. Yes, any other reasons why you like it better?
Well, sometimes
Do say you don't
I like the jewel on the top. That bit.
Yeah, that's enamelling on the top, so you like the sort of simple element of colour coming in there.
Well, sometimes less is more. So
Good comment. Yes, that's true. I think that's what sometimes Mr. Ashby would have thought.
But
Having
that's
said
the
that,
idea of honesty that we were talking about.
Yes.
In relation to those, which is the more sort of honest.
Having said that, I think that in the mask, some of the things that they produced were actually almost over-decorated because they were trying to put every aspect of their skill into them. There was a throne that you haven't seen that is just highly carved, and it seems to me that they were just trying to say, we are capable of doing all this. It wasn't particularly simple.
Kind of nylon.
Why don't you like nylon?
Well, it's just a bit slicky. I'd rather because it
Yeah.
kind of goes up with these.
Yeah, absolutely. What do you think those are made out of as a contrast?
Wool.
Those are made out of wool, yes. So those are made out of hand knitted from a natural material, wool, which was, very important to the Cotswolds. The nylon was a much newer synthetic fibre, which was revolutionary when it came out, as David remembers, having a nylon shirt.
Yes, you had nylon shirt. 40 years ago, if you had a nylon shirt.
I'd probably use that one rather than that one.
Why do you think you would use that?
Because that one's just a bit...
The smaller one that hasn't had anything added to it, like it hasn't been necessarily glazed or anything, they would have been most likely to use as an actual egg cup. But then the taller one, which has been glazed and smoothed down, you probably now you'd have it as a deck. The way it feels, it's a lot more rougher, as if it's been made by hand and that.
Yes, I think it's very interesting that you're noting some of the qualities of the handmade stuff, and sometimes it does feel rough, doesn't feel so highly finished as, the way a machine can polish something, maybe very different from the way a man can sand it down and finish it.